so let's maybe, so both of you are women of color who write uh, and are journalists. Maybe we could, Matt, what was your first question? I thought it was great. Let's start with that.
Sorry, what, Sam?
What was your first question? I mean, I can ask it.
No,
but...
that's all right. So basically, the Twitter sphere, that's where I'm on all the time. And I have been seeing quite a bit of harassment to journalists within the election. I mean, overall, everything journalists do, you get harassed for, but specifically elections, sometimes it gets people really drummed up. And I'm just wondering, and I'd love it if you both could speak about harassment and or belittling and or even, you know, those DMs that come to you, especially when you are covering the election and election topics.
And I'll cut in to say that, like, I think some journalists get away with things. Like,
yeah, if you're white and male, you probably do. So
yeah, but I've seen Fatima, particularly with you recently, I've seen a lot, and I just wanted to break my phone in anger and solidarity.
I also wanted to break my phone. I wanted to like throw it off a cliff and never see it again. No, it's one of the hazards of the job, unfortunately. Like Evie and I have been experiencing hate at various moments of our career, mostly depending on what you write about or what you decide to say on Twitter, and sometimes for no reason at all because you exist in the journalism sphere. The hate that you're referring to in particular, last week, Mariam Monsef, who's the Canadian Minister of Women and Gender, I believe, and an Afghan refugee, she, in a press conference, is called the Taliban Brothers, which, you know, complicated, complex, shouldn't have done it under current news climate, wrong setting, wrong word choice, etc. I decide to comment on it because there are not a lot of Muslim political journalists in this country. So sometimes I feel the weight of needing to comment on moments like this. I decided to comment on it, and Evie asked me to write a piece on it to sort of explain the cultural reference that, or the cultural usage of the term brothers, and why it was probably a bad idea, and the larger picture. And of course, experienced a whole week of hate as a result. So it's a hazard of the job. People have strong opinions on things, and people don't understand things. You learn to deal with it, you cry, you eat a lot of ice cream, go for long walks, and then get over it.
Yeah, it's...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's crazy. And I mean, even when I commissioned the piece to Fatima, I was like, we both knew that it was going to break down like that. Like, we kind of knew, like, I was like, just watch yourself, mute your stuff. It's really good, though, to have Fatima and other journalists of color, women journalists of color, because they got your back and we got each other. So it's we go through this so much, and it's so often that honestly we already know it's coming. And it's like, it's on top of being a woman and getting disgusting death threats or misogynistic stuff, or you know, even like stuff like as dark as like rape and stuff like that, just having that in your inbox randomly, you're like, right, that's crazy. We also happen to be women of color, so I'll always get all this crazy racist, you know, anti-Asian stuff. And I'm sure, Fatima, like yourself, you already know what is coming to you. So it's like, I do think we have a really hard shell, and it's not easy to take, but because we have each other and navigating it once and twice and trying to get over it, it's a lot. It's sad you have to log on knowing that's going to happen when you open your mouth or you know, say something out there and use your voice and, you know, have the agency, because they don't want to see us win. Really, they don't. But I commend Fatima this week for her strength, and it really sucks. Like, it's like terrible. But if she didn't get that message out there, she didn't explain that cultural nuance, she didn't offer Canadians a moment to understand a little bit into perhaps how other diasporas work, that would be a disservice to everyone, and only furthers, you know, Islamophobia, which is already a terrible thing, and terrible thing that's happening all the time. So I thank her for that, really.
I wanna go back to the Mariam Monsef thing, but before I do, I have to ask, in the DMs when you're getting all this hate, is it white people? Because I feel like when I get critical feedback, I do not experience, I think, to the degree that the two of you do, but it's almost always white people telling me how I should exist or how I should show up, and I just like don't have the patience for that anymore. Like, maybe in 2015 I would have taken that, but 2021 Samantha is not about that life. So yeah, like, What are you?
I honestly couldn't tell you because some of them have like weird photos and weird names, quite
Yeah.
frankly. So I don't want to make a judgment call, right, on that. But to flip it positively, I did get a lot of nice comments as well. Like people had my backs, people cleaned up my DMs and my comments rather, and people sent some really nice emails. I had to go through the filth to find it, but there were good in my inboxes and my DMs. And I think that's the takeaway from this election, right? We often focus on the anger and the negativity and the harassment that politicians are facing. And of course, it should be called out at all times. I think we're actually having a pretty nasty election. But at the same time, there are people combating it, there are people fighting it, and there are people trying to change the narrative. It doesn't happen overnight. We have to have these conversations. We have to inform people. We have to educate people. And that's so great about Evie's In Their Voices series. You get to hear from the people that you might be attacking or that might be doing the attacking or so forth, and you build understanding. It takes time, and that's one of the roles federal leaders should be playing.
For sure. And just to agree with that, often I would say there many are bots, and I'm pretty sure I know where they come from. And when I get those emails, it's always like anonymous, obviously. But I'll also say that I think when they see women of color speaking up, and I grew up under the stereotype of not speaking out loud and not using my voice and just always being not the main character. I'm not saying I'm the main character, but not even allowing myself to answer questions in school because I didn't fit the mold of what I thought someone who could answer questions looked like, right? So I've really tried to flip it so much. I'm still learning every day. I'll get stuff wrong. But if I don't use my voice and I don't speak up for people, especially in this election, and it's so funny. So some of my biggest hate comments is when our team posts TikToks, like especially because my face is on it. And I just think it's a really stupid thing to not use a tool that's technically free and has so many people on it to inform people. And it's like the first thing you get to say when we post stuff that's like about the election, explainers about COVID-19 passports, anything. It's like, how can we take you seriously? This is like a stupid app. I'm like, you went on another app to talk about another app where we could get a huge population of young voters, which, by the way, have been so sheltered and it's not sheltered, but hidden from the news because it doesn't speak to them, people of color as well. And you choose to just keep your discourse in one place that's like a bubble. And so I find that hate incredibly weird. I find it strange that people would go out of the way to talk more shit, just to say like an app is bad and not even get the content in it. So all that stuff just to say we are going to be pumping out election stuff all the time on TikTok, Instagram. I don't care what you have to say about it. I really don't, I don't even read it. It's just a waste of my time. Like if you don't think
someone
it's serious,
has to talk about
for
the
you
issues.
anyways.
Yeah, someone just has to talk about the issues that matter to not just like one group of the community. They have to talk about issues that matter to all groups of the community, which is why we need to have these conversations and why Evie and I exist in journalism, right? We are passionate about bringing in the voices that are often missing from election coverage, from political coverage, and that's what we're trying to do. And if the cost of that is to get hate, unfortunately, we'll bear it because the goal is much bigger. It's much bigger.
I think it's so terrible that that's a cost. I mean, it is a reality of the world, but of the world that people of color occupy when they're trying to show up fully, when they're trying to do the thing a little differently. Even if you do everything they tell us to do, you're still going to come up against hate. Like it's not. So might as well disrupt while you're doing it, right? I'm obsessed. I say this all the time to our team about the Toronto Star TikToks. I'm like, finally, somebody is on fucking TikTok.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for bringing these things to where people are. Because if we don't, knowledge is power, and if the information stays in silos of generations that are older, whiter, and have different perspectives from younger people, diverse people, then we get stuck in this like. They make all the decisions because they have all the information, so they're able to mobilize. And then the rest of us are like watching dances. And like, I love TikTok dances, don't get me wrong. But I love also seeing information that helps me be a little bit more informed around an issue. So I freaking love it 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
I mean, but.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, it's like what I've always, Fatima is so important because she's on these panels and, on mainstream TV, they're lucky to have her there. Like, we need that. It seems like we have the same pundits talking about the same thing all the time. And when you keep saying the same thing for decades and generations, like, oh, young people don't vote anyways. Oh, it's smarter to vote like this way because like then this person doesn't, and like if you keep doing those narratives over and over again, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that young people might hear it and they think their vote doesn't matter, right? Like it's kind of annoying, plus already being like, you know, not even in the circle of information when it comes to voting. Like, you know, media isn't accessible for everyone. It's not everyone can afford it, unfortunately. And you know, politicians, I don't think do a great job of reaching out and using all these tools to like really get people to understand these simple things, right? They always make it so busy and it's like a big maze. So any way that we can break it down in places where we know people are that don't get the information, or demographics that don't, like I find that so important. And so I would never shy away from using TikTok or whatever, and just knowing like, you know, what we're doing is really important, especially when we're trying to inform people on the importance of voting and all that kind of stuff, and trying to break out of the cycle of being like, young people don't vote, they don't do their civic service, they don't do anything. Like if you keep saying that, a young person that's passing the TV and hears that, with these same people on TV saying that, really might think there's no point for me to go because young people don't vote. So that's why I find it really damaging.
100%.
Well, Evie and I are doing two different sides of the same goal, right? Where Evie is trying all the new mediums, trying to get new audiences and younger voters involved in the political process, which is so important. And I'm trying to disrupt the conversations that traditionally ignore the young people and just racialize people, quite frankly. Like you often hear about like all these conversations about the economy or childcare and so forth. And they always talk about it from a big picture, broad view, not realizing that those policies are going to impact communities differently. They're going to impact generations differently. And someone has to step up and say, hold on, how does this actually impact me, a 20-something-year-old university student or recent graduate, or someone who just started their first job who wants to buy a house? Like, can you bring it down to my level and talk to me like that? And that's what we're trying to do. And it's really hard, but that's why we need people to support our work and to be more engaged, quite frankly.
Yeah, and if I can just add, like, also being people that come from, you know, different backgrounds and the diaspora, like I can tell you the Chinese Canadian churches, some of them are the biggest incubators of white supremacy. I'll be honest, because I have that experience, right? I grew up there. I know what they talk about. I know how they vote. I know, you know, what a certain elite group of people in my own community and what they do. We bring that to the table. Like we're there trying to understand the population. And that was a really big thing, especially with vaccines. Like I remember seeing Fatima posting on Twitter every day, like, I'm going to be near the mosque. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. I'm going to help you, you know, figure out how you can get your vaccine or whatever. And because she's at the table, because I'm lucky to be at the table, we can tell these stories, which is like, do we know how the pockets of Canadians vote in different racialized communities? I don't think the mainstream knows that. And everyone who is on TV and giving their take, like I said, the pundits that are usually there are generally, you know, white men, and they wouldn't have that knowledge. Like they wouldn't understand that. So I think it's really important, and there's still so much missing because there still needs to be way more people with different perspectives at the table. But I just think like that's such an important point. And so it's sad, like bring it back to the beginning, but like when we receive hate, we're like, no, we're trying to do a lot. Like we're trying to bring our family's perspectives into this. And as someone who grew up in that kind of family, I didn't grow up reading newspapers, watching the news. I just didn't. It didn't speak to me or my family. And so now that I work here, it's so important to me to like figure out everything I've missed and what everyone else might be missing. So that's why I'm super passionate about making sure like everyone can understand or see themselves represented in the news and how they may want to vote or how they can even be more informed.
Yeah. Just kind of like riffing off of that, the two of you are, and Sam included, actually, all of you are disrupting the echo chamber, basically, of only the mainstream media bouncing the same ideas back and forth. And when your voices are interjected, it's real life, real time, and you're disrupting that echo chamber, which is great. I'm wondering, though, kind of moving into a different kind of topic, but same kind of plane, how do we feel about neutrality in the media? Sometimes these stories get brought out and it's toast, like it's plain toast. Like they're not giving the hard facts. They're not giving like a stance on something. And the two of you and both of your platforms, Fatima, I listened to your podcast, and Evie, I read your articles. So both of you definitely don't take a stance of neutrality. And how do you navigate those waters?
Listen, you just have to call bullshit bullshit. Like that's the job of a journalist. You just call the thing what it is. And you know, I understand, like, back in the day, journalism was about, no, if you inject your personal opinions in it, people won't trust you. But now, if you pretend to, like, see bullshit and not call it bullshit, how are people meant to trust you? Like, it's a different world. It's a different environment. People can do their own research. Like, the newspaper isn't the only thing people read anymore. They've got Google at their fingertips. So if you're a journalist and you can't just, you know, if you're hearing a federal leader say something that's completely factually incorrect, or that completely has no bearing in the society, or that is completely ignorant of the reality on the ground, and you're like just reporting it as is without actually calling it out, then what is the point of you as a journalist, right? I mean, this is my perspective, so people can disagree with me in the industry, but I'm not going to stand by and say, like, yeah, Justin Trudeau's housing policy includes this and this and this, and then not say, hey, where's the affordable housing, man? Like, Peel Region needs it. Where is it at? Like, I'm going to call it out. That's my job.
Definitely. And I think being objective is impossible. And the idea of objectivity is not the way everyone sees it. Like, that term was coined by the people who have been the legacy people in journalism.
Mm-hmm.
I bring this to, like, policing, where, you know, it was okay, I swear, like, even 5 years ago, even before, like, to simply just take a police press release and just regurgitate it instead of being at the scene and seeing the people, and, you know, if there's any witnesses, if there's anyone else we could talk to. The police, as we know, don't work for every single population in the same way. And that's a fact. You know, the numbers, that to me is a fact. It isn't neutral to be, here's the police side, and that's the only official source, and there's no one else in the story. Like, bye. Like, I don't think that's technically objective or fair. And so, like, I think when it comes back to that, like, when I'm trying to redefine that or understand, you know, what are the stories that we post on social media? What are the stories that we make TikToks? My team, we work from, like, an anti-oppression lens, an anti-racism lens. Like, if it's going to be stories of migrants, people who don't have voices, we're going to give them the most coverage if we can, because traditionally it's a fact to say that they have it a little bit harder. They don't have their voices there. They don't have platforms. And so it's just, like, really important to me when I think about all this whole neutrality, objectivity, and I am really loud on my own account, just because I feel like I've been waiting, I don't know, 20-something years being silent and thinking I don't have the right thoughts or something like that. And I'm not going to think like that anymore. But even when we bring it to the Star, there are things that we have to do to redefine it. We are not going to debate if a statue of a colonizing, you know, genocidal and, like, whatever dude is the right move or not to take it down. I'm going to defer to the people of this land. You know, I'm going to defer to what they have to say. That is not a debate. Like, that is a fact that they were colonized and it's a stolen land. So I don't know why the objectivity, and still some places still seem to think that, like, objectivity is, like, getting the colonizer side and with you know, with all the wealth, with all that kind of information, and then, like, putting indigenous people against them. I don't understand how that even is a neutral thing, to be honest.
So I have, oh my gosh, I'm smiling while you're talking about serious things, because I'm like, yes, I agree with all these things. So something that I've noticed, right, is that you'll see, and, like, we were talking earlier about, you know, you guys are saying something, and this is what sort of brought it up to me in my brain, is sometimes you can have people of color in spaces that are really centered around whiteness, that, like, drink that Kool-Aid or get Stockholm syndrome or whatever the case is going on there, where in order to survive in that space and continue to get promotions and continue to, like, you know, do that they have to, they just become not like the way you guys are showing up and the way that you two are taking up space. And I'm always like, I always think, you know, they're at one point in their journey and we're at a different point in our journeys, and that's just, you know, in decentering whiteness. But I also feel like the other end of that is, like, who else is around those tables? Because sometimes on TV I'll see a person of color as, like, the anchor or the person sitting in the seat hosting it. But I always wonder, like, who's behind the camera making decisions? Because sometimes it feels like that perspective would have been different if the people on the other side were not white, like if they were also people of color.
It does impact things. So, for example, like you mentioned my podcast, The Backbench. You know, that is a podcast created by two young women, young racialized women. Like, my producer is a young Chinese first-generation Canadian, right? And I am an immigrant, and I'm a visible Muslim, and so forth. Like, I'm practicing Muslim, rather. And that changes everything, because our approach to conversations is different to what a traditional show in Canada about politics will do. Like, we had a healthcare episode out this week. We were talking about Indigenous healthcare in there. We were talking about social equity in there. We were talking about communities, rural communities. You don't hear that from the federal leaders. You don't hear questions about that. So definitely the perspective on and off camera changes the conversation. And that's why it's so important to support sort of the journalism that is delivering, the questions and the nuance and the big picture thinking that you want to see that impacts your community. Because there are so many, I know you're talking to Evie and I, but there are so many journalists across the country who are all mostly young, racialized people who are trying very hard to disrupt the narrative, and they really need support right now because they're struggling to have those conversations because they're getting pushback from management, right? They're being like, oh, it doesn't really matter. We saw that when Israel-Palestine happened. We saw a lot of reporters got pushback. In my work with the Canadian Association of Journalists, we heard from a lot of these reporters saying, like, we don't know how to deal with management because they are refusing to see this as a story to cover. So we need to support them as readers, as listeners, as viewers, and everyone from Janella Massa on CBC to Evie at the Star to someone like Kashmala at CBC in Edmonton and beyond. There are so many reporters doing amazing work, and we got to support them so they can keep doing it and change the system.
Definitely. And I would say, like, this is the space where allies should jump in. And we like I said at the beginning, we all have each other's back. Like, me and Fatima, we try our best. And I understand why others who are, they are women or like people of color are afraid to shake things up, especially if you're new. I'm completely and super lucky to have carved out a little space for myself where we I'm an editor of the audience side and social, and having the opportunities to see who can be on the team. I'm really proud to say that, like, the 3 people that we have right now are Ryerson grads as of this year. They didn't come here with, a big list of resume. I'm not saying it works for everyone, but when you feel someone out and, their energy, their passion, all 3 of them are amazing. If you go on the Star TikTok, you'll see Laban, Manuela, and Maddie. They're amazing. They're fresh Ryerson grads, and you can just feel their energy, the things they care about, human rights, and also just understanding new tools. And so I'm doing my best to try to carve out a space where more people can thrive like that. This is a tiny example, and I'm incredibly lucky to be able to have that. But when you see, like, a journalist who's a person of color, like, I think we all try our best, and we should all try our best to jump in as allies, as someone who's like, I got your back if something's up. Like, find those people, connect with them, because when those hateful things happen, when you are being tested at work because of management, when you're feeling like all this stuff, you need that person. Like, you absolutely need those kind of people. Recently, like, I went through a lot. Like, I mean, John Kay messages me all the freaking time and, like, takes all my stuff and, like, blows it up so everyone, like, attacks me. But every time Fatima is there, and actually many of the Muslim journalists, like, they're the ones who got my back. I'm 100. Like, it's like they check on me like this, and it's like, that's what I want to be able to do for other people, and that's what I think we all have to try to do, whether you are white or a person of color. Like, I think that to be someone who wants to promote the fact that news need to be more fair in terms of the way who's reflected, who's there, what we're talking about, we all got to, like, promote, like, and really not promote, but also, like, be there for the people who don't fit the traditional mold.
Yeah. I love that, not only because, sorry, I shouldn't say that. I love that partly because On Canada is such a project that is so community over competition. And the fact that everybody in the journalist sphere, regardless if you're CBC, Toronto Star, whatever, you show up for each other, like, that just shows such solidarity as well. Like, regardless of who you're reporting for, like, it's community. You are a community of women, of people who are bringing real stories to the public, and that's wonderful, and thank you.
Well, there's a whole, like I said, I sound like a broken record. There's a whole generation of journalists who are disrupting the system, and they are doing so to great personal and professional cost. So, like, not to sound too sentimental or cheesy, but if I could make a plea, it's find them and support them, because they really are trying to do the stories the way that Canadians want. And I don't mean like old school Canadians. I mean all Canadians. There is now a journalist who's trying to cover your community, and they need your support. They need you to click on the story. They need you to read it. They need you to share it. They need you to download that podcast, because unfortunately, even though we're disrupting the conversations, it's not reaching to the top, right? Until we get those numbers up. You know, Evie is a genius, and she has done it through TikTok, and we stan her forever. But there are struggles, you know. There's lots of people who are doing cool things that need clicks, that need downloads, and it's a stupid business, but that's what needs to be done. So please support them. Please find them. Please support them. Please share their work and read it, and just be there for them.
That's great.
So I think we're at 8, and I feel like I could talk to the two people.
I feel like we should do bonus round 2 or something.
I'll come back. I'll come back if Eddie comes back.
I'll be back with you. I'm down. Let's do this again.
I'm down. We'll answer election questions. We'll be more political.
Yeah.
You can.
You can answer questions. Don't be like this.
I'm good. But like,
you have thoughts on the vaccine passport? Don't lie to the people.
Oh, girl, I have thoughts on everything. So yeah, I'm totally down to be back.
To further that, then, for any of our viewers who are watching, you can find Fatima and Evie like on their own social medias, and you can also like check them out in that regard as well. Just like in the interim to round 2 of 2.
Yeah.
Down.
Thanks.
Sorry, Sam, I did cut you off. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna echo and be like do what they said. Don't watch this and then not go and check them out. Go check them out. Yeah. We'll link up and do all the things that one does on Instagram. But thank you so much for being here, and I am pumped. I'm holding you to this round 2. Like,
I'm down. Tell me when.
Yeah, we're there.
Thank you so much.
We're there.
Both. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.